Afternoon, folks. Russell here. Jeep stroker update. We're going to start putting the stroker engine together here shortly. We got the block back from the machine shop. They did not hot tank it, and apologized profusely when I picked it up because I wanted it hot tanked, but so we had to hand clean it. One of the things I did do was converted it. I took off the 90-degree oil filter adapter and converted it to use a standard spin-on filter. And all that entails is taking the adapter off, taking the thread nipple off the adapter, removing a roll pin, and threading this in. I actually did another video talking about this, and I'll put a link to it up here if you want to go back and watch it. But simple enough. Oil filter just spins right on, and there's plenty of clearance room here for the motor mounts on the CJ. So let me set the block up, zoom the camera in a little bit so you can see what we're doing today. Today is measuring day. We're going to measure ring gap clearance and bearing clearances, and then start doing some assembly. So let me get the camera and the block moved here real quick. All right, as you can see, we've got nice, clean, perfect bores. This block has been bored 30 over, so that we end up with a 4.6 stroker engine. And we're using Hastings rings, so yep, Hastings. So we're going to be using the Hastings rings. These are not file to fit rings, so I'm not going to check all of them at all the bores. We're just going to check the top and middle compression rings in one cylinder just to confirm they're the right size, and that's it. So the top ring for these Hastings rings are unidirectional. It doesn't matter how they go in, so I'll just slip one in. And to square it up in the bore, we'll use one of the pistons. It's going to go that way. All right. So, you can just see maybe not. So the gap I'm going to measure is right here. The minimum thickness for it is 10 thousandths and the maximum is 24. So I've got a 10 out and a 25. This should fit, this should not. 10 fits, 25 does not. So the top ring is good. And now we'll check the second ring. Second compression ring on these is marked. There's a very slight dimple on the top side. Once again, we'll take one of the assembled pistons and square it up in the bore. And these clearances are the same, 10 and 24. 10 fits, 25 does not go, so we're narrower than 24. So my ring clearances are good. Next thing we got to do is measure the bearing clearances for the main journals, right? And The crank we have has been undersized by 20 thousandths. At this point, it's kind of pointless to actually measure the crank. So what we're going to do is lay the bearings in and clean the crank real well, lay it in with no grease, and then use a product called plastic gauge. We're going to check on the 1, the 4, and the 7 to check the oil clearances. So let me get the camera set up here a little bit. We'll lay these bearing shells in. And as I said before, we're going to set these bearings in dry. These are actually Clevite 77s, and they're set for 20 thousandths undersized. Help if I had the right bearings. Those were the uppers. Here's the lowers. Now if you notice, inline 6 has 7 main bearings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One of them is the thrust bearing. And what the thrust bearing does is keeps the crank from walking back and forth. You've noticed by that copper on the side of it. The thrust bearing on a Jeep 4-liter is number 3. And I had to kind of look at it a little bit because on the Datsun Z car, the thrust bearing is number 4. Okay. Ta-da! Now, since we're going to check 1, 4, and 7, I'm going to clean these surfaces off really well before I lay the plastic gauge in them. Because I do have a little bit of lube on here as a corrosion preventative. Maybe yep, that angle would be easier. And you can just see these bearing caps are stamped. So this is the number 2. I'm going to go ahead and install 2, 3, 5, and 6 just to register this thing. And that was a mistake, because what did I say? Number 3 is the thrust bearing. There we go. So now we're going to use Clevite plastic gauge to measure the bearing clearances for 1, 4, and 7, just to confirm that this crank was ground properly. Alright, now that the main caps are installed with the bearings and the plastic gauge on 1, 4, and 7, we're going to torque these to 80 foot-pounds. And then we're going to pull it all back off and take a look, see how far they spread. Now they're all torqued to 80 foot-pounds. And one of the things that's critical with this, number one, the ones that we're checking, which in our case we're doing 1, 4, and 7, are oil and grease free. And the second thing you want to do is don't move the crane. Don't rotate it, because it'll wipe that plastic gauge right out. So what I'm going to do now is remove these bearing caps. Alright, we got the bearing caps off, and you can see this is what's left of that plastic gauge, that little smear. So we're going to measure the thickness of that, and that'll tell me my oil clearance on number 1. And then I'll just go through and check the rest. It's kind of hard to get the camera set up for this. So it looks like a .002 clearance, and that should be so the clearance we're looking for is .001 all the way up to .025, which makes no sense. I think that's a misprint. Anyway, we're at .002. So we got a good clearance. I can run a standard pressure oil pump on this. If the clearance was too large, so if we were over in here, I'm sorry, yeah, if we were over here, where we're like a .001, .002, so if we were down here in the .003 range, or greater, then I'd run a high volume oil pump. So this is a 0.002, and I'll just go ahead and verbally tell you guys what the rest are. That was a 0.0015, 0.002. So we're well within spec. So the bearings, bearing clearances are well within spec. Number 1 came in at a 0.002. Number 4 was at a 0.0015, so it's an even tighter clearance. And then number 7 was at a 0.002. So the bearing clearances are definitely within spec. I can get away with running a standard volume oil pump. If the clearances were too wide, past 0.003, then I'd run a high volume oil pump and continue on. So I'm going to pull this crank back out and wipe off the plastic gauge, and then we're going to put lubriplate in the bearings and put it all back together and have this crank installed. Now, there's a lot of different assembly lubes on the market. Depending on what the application is, how long the motor's going to sit or whatever, a lot of times I like to use this lubriplate stuff. I don't know. It's got a little bit of moly in it, so it's really good, especially if you're gonna, in this case, the motor's gonna be assembled and sit for a while. So I'll coat all the bearing surfaces with lubriplate. We'll lay that crank back in there. So, silly me, I forgot to put the rear main seal. There we go. I forgot to put the rear main seal in. One of the beauties of the design of this motor in the Jeep 4-liter and the 258s, it's got a two-piece rear main. It has a two-piece rear main seal. So part of it goes into the number 7 bearing cap, and the other part rides into the block. The beauty of that design is you can actually install this seal while the engine is installed in the car without pulling the crank. But since I will be starting, since this motor is going to be assembled and then sit in the vehicle for quite some time before we run it, I need to get grease into the seal, and the only way to do that is with the crank out. So what I'm going to do right now is ride this seal in. Make sure I got the camper the right way. We'll get some of that lubriplate in that seal. Because it'll stay for a while. And now we can put the crank in. And we put all our main bearing caps back on. And we'll go ahead and torque these to 80 foot-pounds. And then, of course, number 7 cap is 80 foot-pounds as well, but there's some RTV we've got to stick in the corners here because of the seal. Now, my particular seal manufacturer calls for RTV in the recesses in the block on the outside edges here. However, Jeep calls for an anaerobic sealant. So instead of RTV, I'll use the anaerobic sealant. And this bearing cap is ready to install. Just got to put a little peanut butter lubricate in here, ample amount. Make sure I get the seal well lubed as well. We don't want it to leak. There we go. And we torque it to 80 foot-pounds. All right, come back and check them all. Spins free. Beautimus. All right, that's all we got for today. Once again, as a recap, we checked our piston ring gap clearances. We checked our crank main bearing oil clearances, and then installed the crankshaft. Tomorrow we'll come back and install the pistons and finish assembling this short block. So that's it for now. If y'all like this content, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell icon for future notifications, and as always, there's more to follow.